Oh, there we go. There we go. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to VD4GM, the podcast where we delve into captivating world of D&D 5e, exploring intricate homebrew campaigns and discussing therapeutic powers of TTRPGs and mental health, especially for veterans. Join us as we journey through the fantastic realms, uncovering the magic of storytelling and healing potential of role-playing games. I am the host, not with the most. My name is Knight. To my immediate right is Daddy Bro 72. Daddy Bro 72, say hi.
Hi, Daddy Bro.
On the right side of that, we have Super Wolf Leo, aka Leo. Leo, how you doing today?
Oh, doing pretty good. Glad to be here.
Fantastic. And last but definitely not the least, except for maybe the least favorite. No, I'm just kidding. We have Psych Ward, aka Chris. What's going on, Chris?
What's up, guys?
All right,
The
so
roof?
let's.
The roof?
Yeah, the
Roof?
roof. The
It's on
roof
fire.
is on
Yep.
fire. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
Don't need no water.
Let them
No, just let it burn.
MF burn.
Anyways, all right. So why don't we just jump right into it? How about it? So Chris, let's actually start with you, brother. You're
Sure.
down on that end. We'll work our way down towards me.
Okay. Yeah. One of the things I wanted to bring up tonight, and I was building out a few characters just to play around with them with the new rule books. And one of the things that was interesting was the character origins and backgrounds. So you no longer get ability scores with the what they're now calling species instead of race. So it used to be your species or your race gave you your +2 or +1, or depending on like where it was coming from. Sometimes it changed up depending on like what book it was out of. And they've completely gone away from that now. All of your beginning attribute scores, you get an automatic beginning feat at the beginning as well that's tied to the background. You get skills proficiencies that are tied to the background as well. A tool proficiency tied to the background, and then whatever equipment is good for that. So to give an example of that, one of them is the acolyte, which is used quite a bit in like clerics and wizards, and there's quite a few of that class that tend to use that background. But the ability scores that it will increase there is your intelligence, wisdom, or charisma is what you're looking at there. The feat that you get is magic initiate, which is cleric based, is the feat that automatically comes with that. And skill proficiencies is insight and religion. Tool proficiencies is calligraphy supplies. And then your equipment. So you get like a calligraphy supply book, holy symbols or parchment, things like that come with the equipment. So anyways, the reason I wanted to go over that was just to give an example of it. But they've also opened it up to allowing you to completely build out a custom background, or choosing a species or race that isn't in the new book, but then ditching the ability scores and allowing you to use the ability scores in your background instead. So there's some changes you have to do when creating those backgrounds and characters. The thing that I think, and I wanted to bring this up as discussion, was I think that this open, and the idea behind it is it opens up more creativity on why your background matches up with your character build. Instead of just grabbing one that has the specific proficiency you're trying to get, or the specific skill that you're trying to pick up. That tend to be what people really leaned into before, right? They're like, oh, I'm building this character, I want this specific proficiency or skill, so I'm going to take this background, even if the background like would make no sense sometimes with that specific build. I think that's why they opened it up so much to having the background being customized as well. So what are you guys' thoughts on that? And I think Superwolf, that this goes kind of eventually into what you were going to discuss too, right? Was kind of like, how do you build a character and level them up and like kind of increase that character up. And I think some of that has to do with your background as well, correct? Like,
well, more of how to grow your character.
Okay, got it.
Like, you know, I can't think of the word, but like grow it organically. There we go.
Got it. Yeah.
So I see two things. One, I mean, they've gotten rid of the races being stat blocks, which is good because one, they'd already done it with allowing every race to change. But the truth is, it makes more sense. You know, this allows you a bigger fluidity in choosing races for classes to fit whatever story you want to tell. When you were too locked down, if you really wanted to have an optimal character, right? But I see that you're still going to just have the same background or the same problem with the backgrounds now. Now everything is tied to the background. Yes, you can customize and make your own, which may be interesting, especially with how the character builder is so implemented in D&D now.
Mm-hmm.
How they're going to incorporate the flexibility of customizing your own, right? But two, then you're just down to the same thing. You're either one, making your own to fit what you want, or two, you're picking a background to get the same things that you wanted. Honestly, I think they should probably even just take it out of the background and be like, look, here's all the optional things that you would want. Here's a stealthy type, here's a melee type, here's a ranged type, here's a spellcaster's type, right? And then that would be all your random like stat blocks, you know, proficiencies, stuff like that. Or you could even still have proficiency in the origin, the background. But when you type so much more now into one thing, you're going to have everybody still being the same background for the same classes. Mm-hmm. You're going to have less flexibility unless you fully go into customizing and making your own. And then at what point do you as a DM require them to flesh out that background? You know, is it just a stat block? Is that what we're going for? Or you had a story in mind when you wanted to customize that background?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that one thing I like about it is that it puts it at the forefront. So when you're building out the character now, it has you choose a class, and before you even choose your species, it has you choose your background, like the new layout.
Yeah.
And so it kind of...
Yep, we lost it.
It kind of allows the newer players to see, oh, I should think about this. Like, this is the next stage in like building the character. So I think the progression of the character build for new players was interesting. How they put that into the like D&D Beyond, and the layout there, and that was, I think, their purpose behind it. I do like the fact that it's very like open to customizing though, because before, you know, you have like all these backgrounds and you would try to find one that would fit in, and you could customize, but it wasn't really easy to do. Like, it wasn't necessarily like set up to do it that way. So now they've actually got like a rhythm of what you would follow on how to do that. So yeah, anybody else's thoughts on it?
Well, I don't know. I'm still, you got to remember, I'm still coming from the old school where we did everything, you know, roll for half an hour. Well, like half a day to figure out your whole setup. And the thing about it for me, because I have ADHD, right? I go down an ADHD hole with this stuff. I can literally sit there and go through these different creative processes and be like, oh, I really like that. Oh, wait, I really like that. It's so difficult for someone like me to pick something like that. I think it's great. I like, like what Leo's saying, it provides you an opportunity there, I think. And that's good from a dungeon master perspective and from a player perspective, I think. But it's for people that have ADHD, we see a shiny, it can be overwhelming, really can. I still don't think it's a bad thing. I just think it's one of those things that you got to kind of step back sometimes and say, okay, I'm not going to look at the shiny. I have a purpose in mind, and this is the purpose I want to use. I think that's the key to being. You got to kind of walk a path with it,
One thing that I saw that they didn't include in the new character build system is, when you would build the character before and you would go through and do your background, and directly after your background you could roll and you could choose kind of like the top things that kind of like made you who you were. Like, these are your like not attributes, but this is how your character acts in the world.
The bond, the
right.
ideal. Yeah.
And now it's just blank. Like, there's nothing to roll. It's just blank. They want you to make up your own. I was like, that, to me, when I saw that, and I like building characters, but when I saw there was like no guidance at all, I was like, yeah, that's a little bit like, especially for a new player coming in, it's like,
yeah,
that doesn't here.
That doesn't make sense, especially when you had all the other stuff that they were adding to focus on new people.
I don't know if my only thoughts behind that is they're purposely trying to get the DM more involved in the character build process with the player. Because the player is going to reach out, especially new players. They're going to reach out and be like, what do I put here? And so it's going to drag the DM into the character build section to be able to give that like input on, well, you can do a custom background here if you'd like, if you want to tell me a little bit about what you had in mind, and then you can like go through the process at that point. But I don't know if they intentionally did that or what.
I feel any new DM or any DM that has a new player like that's never played before, you should only be making that character sitting down with that player, because they're going to look at it and just get lost and not really be able to pick something that even comes close to something they might have in mind.
What? That's not that. I had okay. Well, I'm just giving you grief, actually. But in all honesty, I did have a new player last night for one of my one shots, and she did really, really well, like comparatively speaking, compared to somebody that I think has never even picked up the books. I feel like she had actually picked up all of the books and studied before she actually jumped into building the character. So, I mean, that's my only 2 cents on it.
Did she play other like tabletop games? Because that's the one thing that I would see.
Yeah, no, this was actually her first campaign, her first one shot actually ever, and she was really happy with what she had built and everything like that. And she had told me that she was reading through not only the player's handbook, but she bought like the player's handbook for 5e and a couple other books so that she could get a tabaxi and play a tabaxi cleric. She did her research and she learned. And so I think that's something that it says a lot about somebody if they're dedicated to it. If they pick up the books, they could be a first-time player as long as they do the research and learn what the process is for said character.
Yeah.
I have seen a lot of... Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, to answer Chris's question, I believe they've done it so that you have to buy the books. I think it's simply a money grab. That's the view I take on it as someone who's kind of new. To me, because like he just said, if you get the books and you do a little research on it, you can build the character. If you come in cold, you're going to have to rely on the dungeon master, and a lot of people don't want to do that, right? They want to be able to do their own thing. Yeah. And the only way you can do that is if you do the homework. So, look, if you're going to play D&D, you're probably going to dive in anyway. All right. So it's just an extra excuse to buy an extra book. That's the way I'm viewing it. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but to me, it's definitely there is a money component here. I think for them, and it makes sense. It does. It really does.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that anybody should ever do what Psych Ward has done and go and buy every book in like a matter of a couple weeks.
I don't have every book. I just pick up a new one with every paycheck.
Dude, Library of Congress calls you when they need another D&D book.
Exactly.
So anyways, yeah, I just felt it was fairly interesting kind of how they built that out. And because before backgrounds were just it was at the end of your character build, and it was kind of like I'll choose this and like just move forward. Like now they're putting it towards the front, and it's supposed to play a heavier part of your build, right? Like I think that's the way to see it anyways. I also think that they're trying to, I don't know if this is intentional, but I do think that they're also trying to get people to dig more into, again, book purchases, but dig more into like the lore of things, because for the last like couple of years, a lot of the games that I've played have been extremely like strategy wargamey type build, campaign builds, instead of D&D campaign builds, if you will. Like when I say D&D campaign builds, like you're finding the materials, crafting your own items, like building your, like they brought back Bastion, or they're being brought back, the Bastion systems and all that stuff, right? So like there's a lot you can really go into, and even on like off time and all that stuff, and like you don't really hear about a whole lot of that from a lot of the new players that are coming on. So
could that be the Warhammer effect?
Well, they've had
coming over from Warhammer.
I know for downtime, that has been something that's been talked about in circles for years, and they've never really put anything out. It's always third-party companies that put out books for downtime or even character building, that expand that area that you can look at. Wizards has never really put in extra time to those. They give you the rules, they give you the feats, they give you new classes, new archetypes, new whatever. Right? They give you the rule, they give you the information, but they never put out books that guide you or show you the character builder, where you would have like the ideals and the bonds and that stuff. That's the closest they've ever come to something like that, to actually giving some guidance around the flavor of a character, right? And so I think that's a big reason for that.
Yeah, I think the only time they really dove into that was Xanathar's Guide, where they had a whole section on kind of like, this is what you should do with downtime, but it was very like, it was like a one-pager. In a huge book, like it was like a one-page section of that book. To your point though, and that's definitely something that I want to cover in the future, is these like supplemental materials, right? I think it's good that they open it up and have supplemental materials, because that's a big portion. I would say like 90% of what we see as D&D today was driven by things that had been supplemented into the game over time. But anyways, yeah, so the background side of it, it's I was curious as to whether or not they're trying to get people to get more into the actual like role play aspect of it, instead of just the go in and kill stuff and get out, like dungeon running. Like they're actually trying to get people to do campaigns instead of just dungeon running.
I don't know. It's a good question.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly enough, I actually do like the supplemental play that me and you have discussed in the past, where you add in the armor smithing or the leather working, or the component gathering part of aspects of D&D that a lot of people don't actually talk about. I mean, to me, that just makes the world and opens it up to something more. It's not just about dungeon crawling or, go and find this person or go and kill that person. Um, it opens it up to make it feel more, uh, I don't know, I guess identity. It opens up more identity for the character and their gameplay.
Well,
Does that make
shopping
sense?
sessions, yeah, shopping sessions have always been like that 50-50 on whether DMs want to do it or not. And that it goes to the same thing. Armor crafting, all of those things. Supplemental is the only way to go if the DM wants it.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Cool.
Go for it. Come on,
Yeah,
Chris.
no. The other part too with the backgrounds was the fact that they have really dove into in here because they're actually calling it like character origins now instead of just backgrounds, and they want you to do your origin and your species build at the same time. So your background and your species build, they want you to like tie those two together, and they all fall into the same chapter in the new book. Which is interesting when they do that as well. So, but they lead with with the background first. So I think maybe like again going to like a newer player, if you're like, oh, I have no idea like what I want to do, but you're like, oh, I'm a fighter, like I'm simple, I come from a farm or whatever, and so you can actually one of the backgrounds is a farmer, and the farmer is where was it in here? It gives you, I think. It gives you carpenter's tools. Your ability scores can be strength, con, or wisdom, and it gives you the tough feat, right? And those line up with that kind of a background, right? Like coming from a farmer background. So, anyways, but to your point too, I'm wondering if they also, because there's only, what is it? There's only 15, 16 backgrounds available in the new book. So I think they're kind of giving you a guide. Like this is how we would build it, but they really want you to lean in and do the custom build. That's my take on it when I read through it.
I think the other thing that they're doing by doing that is they're allowing themselves to sprinkle in backgrounds through the next sets of books, reprints of books, based on whatever is the lore or theme of that book, and they're allowing to sprinkle them in there so they can sell you more stuff.
Because the old ones are going to become legacy. Yeah.
Right.
As they do that. Correct. Yeah. No, that makes sense. Because they kept preaching like, oh, your old games are going to be still like backwards compatible and playable, but for how long? Like before you make the next like version of it, right? And so now we're going to all have to go out and buy the next version. So,
well, I will say, and again, this goes on what they said. They did say that this is supposed to be the last revamp of the versions. That everything else is just going to now be errata and at additions and supplements and expansions. There's not going to be any more rewrites. And I think that's because they are good. Well, kind of. But I think it's because they're now all digital with it, that if they do it too many times, it gets, one, pricey because they have to redesign all the software and everything else. It's more expensive than just printing a book now. Writing a book, printing it, and selling it. Now they have to have all the software to redesign it to fit all the new stuff. So I think somebody realized at some point that it would become very cost prohibitive to keep changing stuff. So if they just make it a baseline, the other DC-20 systems, where it's all based off the D20. It's the kind of same thing. Everything's a baseline, and we just add on top of that. And they've had The world of Palladium way back in the day did that. They were the first one to do a baseline D20, and they made it so you could add fantasy, you could add sci-fi, you could add robots, you could add future, you could have everything all in the same system, because it was all based off of D20s and D6s, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and honestly, that's the way. If you've ever played BattleTech, BattleTech is actually a lot more D6, like 1D20 and D6s. Um, to me, I think BattleTech is fantastic for that. But I say bring BattleTech back, bring it back, guys. Anyways, let's. So I noticed. I know that. Give me 1 second. I had it pulled up here for a moment. And David, you were talking about building out your characters and stuff like that. Or I'm sorry, Leo, you're talking about building up your or building a character and making it more well-rounded and stuff like that. Tell me, how do you do that though for somebody that's new to the game? How do you do something like that and encourage somebody to actually read the books versus just go in and listen to what people are telling you?
Well, it's not even about reading the books, though, because like we just said, the books don't have anything on how to expand your character unless you get a supplemental book. Like there's supplemental books that have just pages and pages of charts for like randomizing shit, your siblings, your parents, who's alive, who's dead, how'd they die, who's an ancestor, all those things.
Right.
Which is fun and can be a lot of fun to create a truly random character. Right?
Right.
I did that in a campaign once. I was like, I'm going to make a dwarf and I'm going to make a cleric. And then we went through all of the checklists, and whatever the roles came up with, that's how my character was built around.
Right.
Now, that's because the person had the book. But normally, start small. Ask and answer one, like start with one question. What did I do as a kid? Why am I here? And just start expanding it as things come up, right? What's my weapon of choice? Why do I like that weapon? Figure it out.
Right.
And if you can become more creative with the answers, like, oh, well, my dad, this is, a weapon handed down to me by my dad or my mentor, or I saw somebody cool when I was a kid that could wield one of these, and the more you can just start simple and just expand it, oh, well, why, and just keep going and, just keep expanding that way until you feel, hey, this is kind of a cool concept that I feel is fairly complete. The other thing that I think players should do is when things happen in the game, right? How does your character react? Like, not just combat, but like if something weird happens, how do they react? How do you want them to react? And then, then remember that and grow on that. Like, your character is changing as you level. So it would make sense that they would pick up new habits or new phobias or new things like that. And one of the things that I used to do is I'll roll percentage dice when it's one of those obligatory answers, like it doesn't really matter. I'll roll a percentage dice and like it'll be A or B, but I'll let the dice decide. How am I gonna freak out? Am I gonna be cool with it? Am I gonna be mad? And I would just do it that way. So that way you don't even have to come up with, hey, everybody pick some options. I'll roll. We go from there. And it's just a way to organically grow the character based off of their experiences.
Yeah. Okay. That's good though. What about you, Daddy Bro? How do you feel about that?
I don't know. I have mixed feelings. I don't know. I'm conflated on it. I see the purpose. I see what I think I see what they're trying to do, but like I said, I'm kind of cynical. I think it's all a money play. That's just my general take on things. Now, I will say this about the digital thing that you mentioned earlier, right? Where it's cheaper or it's more expensive. I don't know if I agree with that, and here's why. It's formulaic, right? If I have a formula, all I need to do is change some minor code. That's not really that hard and not super expensive. But I see where it would definitely make sense to have a baseline, you know. So I don't know that I would say it's cheap. It's more expensive because I don't know that that's the case because AI is getting so good now. There are so many software systems you can use that self-program. All you got to do is give them fields. So if you can make it formulaic where you're doing certain D6s, certain D20s, then I would say that would you know, that wouldn't be that expensive or hard to do, to be honest. What were you doing with the screen, man? Freaking me out. Like, am I high?
I was trying to give you your moment to shine here, man.
Oh God, don't do that. Yeah, so I don't know. I'm very conflated on it because I think I'm conflicted because I really believe that it's a money play. Just do.
I mean,
and that's the cynical mentality, but knowing the people who run this show, I would say it's a money play.
Yeah, without saying any like wizardly names or anything like that, you know.
Yeah.
Harry Potter. Harry Potter definitely has a way of going for the money grab, and that goes across the board for a lot of them. But I can't say that it's all just Harry Potter though either.
No, I don't. I think it's system wide. I think this is that genre, and I get why they do. I mean, it makes sense. It does.
Right.
You have you, and it's really hard because we're in a world full of people with PTSD and ADHD and all these other DDDs. It's hard to grab a population of people and keep them. It is.
Right.
You got to come up with something that works. Now, I think the move to digital is the smartest thing they've ever done, frankly, because, like I said, when we first started to come play, I was terrified because I remember rolling characters and how long it took. And I'm like, oh, my God, there's no way my wife and kid are going to sit through this. It's just not going to happen. And then you guys are like, oh, no, it's on the cell phone. I'm like, what? What?
Yep.
I have to eat a whole pizza and be here for 17 hours to figure out my character? That's awesome. You know, it ain't like the good old days. It's the same thing with a lot of games. You know, that's the main thing that's changed.
Yeah. That is definitely one of the things they did to help bring in new players was they made character creation easy. You know, drop downs, picking. Hey, you don't even need to have books. You don't need to roll. Everything can be done.
And all you got to do is have a kid that's a paladin in real life, and it's good to go.
That's right.
She really is a paladin, man.
Killing me, man.
I hate picking on her like that, but she is a paladin. So
I tell her every day.
Yeah, that's fair. That's totally fair. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about though tonight was more of like homebrew versus book adventuring. Okay, so homebrew adventuring versus book adventuring. And I come from a time where book adventuring was the way to go. And but I'm going to say over the past 10 to 12 years, I found that homebrew world building is so much better. Like, and Psych Ward has helped me out tremendously by saying, hey, go check out this website, go check out that website, and build your world. Like, build the world that you're envisioning. Hey, don't just stick with like one biome or stuff like that. Build a world. And, you know, he gave me a couple tips and a couple videos to watch. And I would be dumb to say that the little pieces of advice that I picked up helped tremendously. Like, I feel like the world that I've created is phenomenally more advanced than some of the DMs that I've actually played with. and I'm not trying to toot my own horn or anything like that. Like, you know,
No, not at all.
but at the same time, like I go, yeah, thank you. Leave it to the Navy to come in with that one. So, but at the same time, like a lot of DMs always start with the you meet at a tavern. I mean, how many times have you guys started a session where you just meet in a tavern?
Well, that's just lore. That's just how it is sometimes, right?
Right.
But it's
But it's something that became like this is how it happens always.
It
And
just makes
that's not
sense, though,
entirely
right?
true.
Like if you wake up in a tavern after like a long night of drinking, you have no idea what just happened. You're like, what did I get myself into? And what did I sign up for?
Right. So
don't get me wrong. The whole Psalm thing where you wake up in a dungeon and you're chained to something is cool, but
okay,
come on.
but think about it like this, though. Okay, let me put it in a different perspective for you. You are telling a story, or you are telling a movie. How many stories or movies start out with in a bar?
okay.
And some of
Wait.
the best movies on top of
No,
that.
no. Think about this. How many stories that somebody has told you says, well, we were drinking. That's the start of the story. That is why a tavern works. Because one, there's drinking. Two, there's so many people around you that you can introduce anything in, and you can give the players the complete freedom to do whatever they want.
But look at
how many stories are, yeah, we were drinking.
Right. But then look at how many movies actually start out that way.
Well,
Do you see what I'm saying? Like it doesn't always have to start out like that.
no, that's true. And again, I think what you're saying makes sense, but I see it as this is kind of a commonality for humans. You know, it's human nature to we're a social creature. And, you know, what better way to do it? How many jokes start? 3 guys walked into a bar. You know, come on, the bar joke is crazy. But
right.
I think to the point, it's a good thing. But like I said, if you want to do the horror movie Saw thing, go for it. You know, I'm down. Wouldn't be the first time.
Find a frying pan. My take is modules, books, unless it's something like a topic you really wanted to do, those are good for new DMs or DMs that are trying to run through something with players that they're not sure about. Like this is a way to start a campaign, right? Because yeah, hey, the module, you get a short module. Like right now, the Mines of Phandelver, right? That was famous because, or got really popular because it was levels 1 through 4. It could be very quick. And then you could expand into whatever you want based on the character's decisions. So modules, and then I also have a friend who's super creative, right? We're playing Strahd with him. But he has modified a lot of the thing, but it is so easy for him, especially since we play digitally, to have the assets for Strahd for that campaign already, because everybody's made them. To have full, well-written descriptions. Like if you're not super creative for so many things, then a module is a great place to start. And then you just expand or change or however you want to do it. But home building, world building, yeah, is a lot of fun if you want to put that much time into it. If you really care to put that much time into it. Because if not, then it just turns into the whole world is we met at a bar. You know, you're taking, oh, well, here's a city, here's a bar, here's a dungeon. You lose a lot of that if you don't put the time in to craft the world.
Right. At the same time, though, here's my debate on it. Is some of the best movies, right? Some of the best movies that have come out, especially here recently, didn't start off with this one time in a bar. Like you can even go over like Quentin Tarantino movies. They don't start in a bar. Horror movies don't start in a bar. And the list can go on and on. Even if you go back to let's say Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit or stuff like that. It doesn't happen in a bar.
A lot of it happens in a
It
bar. What are you talking about? In The Hobbit?
no. Some of what happens in a bar, but not a lot of it. So like
Okay.
they meet at the Prancing Pony and meet you know whoever.
I love that name, by the way. Prancing Pony.
Yeah, the Prancing
You
Pony.
would.
Yeah, leave it to the seamen.
Okay.
Here we go.
So wait. So here is the connection to the point I was making. You have people who have put in pretty much all the time into a story. They did the world building because they had all the time. If you're being an author, you're being a full-time author for the most part, right? You're putting the time into the creation of it if you want a good story. So that's all these people did, but they were also either paid writers, very creative writers, or spent a lot of time perfecting their craft, which is what a good DM does. But it's not for everybody. Not everybody can start writing a book and write be the next Tolkien.
But so to me, I think what separates a good DM versus a bad DM, though, is the ability to actually build something from the theater of mind perspective. So if you're building something, or versus reading a book, if you're reading a book, it's when you're telling that said story, it's not going to come across as enthusiastically as it is if you are just doing it straight from the theater of mind, or you actually take the time to write the book out itself. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you have a lot more back behind you. And to me, I think that is incredible. Like, I personally love the homebrew side of things.
I was going to say, I'm going to point out something real quick of why you do, though, because you are the type of player that wants that. Think of the players that are going there. If your players want to dungeon crawl, want to do hack and slash, then it doesn't matter what the story is because they're not going to care about it. They're going to try and just speed run through it.
Okay,
but
that makes sense.
You as a player who loved that type of story, you are going to be good at writing that, creating that world.
Okay.
The wife, the DM, she has run things for people who want to speed run. She has run things for people who want stories. And so she can kind of adapt as she goes along. But we stopped complete world building a long time ago because a campaign may die and fizzle out. It's easier to customize a setting that's already existing, like the Sword Coast, and do whatever you want in it because you can at least take some staples. Here's a big city, here's some small cities, here's some things that are already set in place that you can easily add on to. And that's what we've done for many years now, is just you take it, you grab a piece of it, and you just customize it. You create your homebrew out of that.
That's fair. That's a good point.
Yeah, one of the things I was going to bring up too is you also now have tools that provide what you're talking about, Superwolf, is like World Anvil and some of these other tools that are out there where you can go actually pull from what other people have also written, right? Like they've built out worlds. And so you can go say, I want to be inspired today on like what I want to add into my world. And that's where I think the modules come into play too. For we were just talking about Dungeons and Dragons, right? And like the world that you're creating right now, Night. And like and I was telling you a little bit about it, and like you were like really digging it all, like pulling it all in, right? And so that's an inspiration to add into your world on the way they've kind of like sculpted their world, right? So now you have all
Right.
these tools that are out there that are really easy to access, like World Anvil and a few others that are out there.
Mhm.
But the good thing with some of those tools, you can go in and literally just like read through what other people have built out and then sculpt your own within that same tool and pull it all in like
Right.
very easily.
Yep.
And so it makes that world building a lot less time consuming and heavy, right? Like I've got 3 or 4 books that I've read already on like how to sculpt a world and how to build a world, and it's pretty
Mhm.
intensive. Like if you really want to
Oh,
do it
yes.
from scratch, it's
Yeah.
very intensive.
Like
But
building the economy and building like the NPCs, like you really have to put a lot of thought into it.
think
And
about like you were going back to like books and movies and all that stuff. How
Mhm.
many books and movies and all that stuff were like from scratch? They're all like inspired by other works of other things that have happened, right? So like very few are like brand new ideas that have never been thought of before because it's too intensive. Like it's too difficult to do. So um
I mean that's fair. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with inspiration. Like by all means, I want people to be inspired to do these things. Uh, but at the same time, like it doesn't have to be straight out of a book. Like it doesn't have to be. You can alter things to keep it more engaging. Does that make sense?
yeah,
Yeah,
I found like in for
I'm
instance.
hoping I'm not coming off as pompous or anything like your paladin, but at the same time, I definitely want more. Like I would love to see more people lean away from the books and build the world more to what they envision that world to be.
I think the like the module like one of the modules you talked about earlier, Super Wolf, and then also like Dragons of Icespire Peak, like those are designed for brand new players, and even for a well-rounded DM, when you're introducing a player that's like, okay, this is what D&D is kind of about, putting them into
Mhm.
those worlds that are already pre-built and allowing them to make some of those decisions and choices because you can start to guide them a little bit easier because it's kind of set up for that. For instance, like when you go in to fight the Manticore or whatever it is, like it's you, at that level you're not going to take on a Manticore, like so you have to help them make those decisions on it's not always fight. Sometimes it's fight or flight, or and we discussed that earlier. And the other one that we discussed last time was the when you go in to pull the jewel in the dwarves cave that you go into, like it
Mhm.
does like a crazy amount of damage if that thing blows up. So like you have an NPC go in and pull the jewel, so you're teaching these players like there are some like serious consequences that can happen if you just go make like rash decisions, right?
Right.
So I think the modules have their place for sure.
Okay.
I have a friend of mine who has been DMing for years, right?
Mhm.
Very creative world building ethic. But his rule or his style is he wants you so engaged in the story that you forget about what's around you. So he allows no talking out of character, no like phones off, all this type of stuff. He's very hardcore and dedicated what he wants.
Right.
But if that's not your cup of tea, then you're neither one of you is going to have a whole lot of fun.
Yeah. I
So,
mean I can I that to me I think is a bit much, a bit dramatic. Like
but that, but
I'm
that's
all
how
about keeping it.
but that's how old school, like Daddy Bro 72. I'm betting that's how some of the DMs were back.
Oh, yeah, they were. It was like a puppet.
If I talked to my DM out of character, you wouldn't even respond to me. I remember that.
Ah,
Yeah, you would like say something out of character, and they would just completely ignore. Like you never said anything.
Yeah, we had a dude who had a stack of books, and he would chuck a book at you, and I'd be like, "Don't hurt me."
Yeah, we used to
oh,
have large wooden D6s.
There you
And
go.
just used them as
uh,
ammo.
See, I can only imagine something like that. Like that would ruin it.
You gotta do.
So I don't think I've actually had a DM that was quite that strict. I have had DMs that are very much like by the book. Like everything that happens has to be done by the book. And I'm like, and to me, I'm like, why? Like, is that how real world works? Is everything by the book in the real world? No, absolutely not.
Well, it comes down to style, though. I think it does.
Yeah.
Some people are just pretend. Like if my kid was DMing, you better believe it'd be by the book. She's just that person. She's a rule follower. You know, you have a population of people that are like that. And honestly, they make really good DMs because they can keep things on track, right? But on the same token, having people on the other side of it that are really creative, that know how to express themselves with words, you know, that have that ability to create a scene and really flush it out. There's a lot to be said for that, and that's not an easy skill to have. It's just not.
I don't know. I'm really passionate about this, man. I'm really passionate.
I get it, and because you have it. That's why. If you can do it, then there you go. I would say the DMs we've been working with are like that. They're very good at setting the tone, setting the scene, and really kind of getting into character sometimes too, which is pretty hilarious.
And we gotta thank Leo for that one.
Yeah, no lies. For real. Yeah. I'm telling you, I'm gonna start doing my Cartman voice when I play. Y'all are gonna get it.
With the blind band?
Yeah.
I used to do a rabbit character that I named him Stitch because he was blue skinned, and I spoke in a Stitch voice. Every time I would start, the table would just die. So I couldn't keep it up for long, but I would start.
Wait. What does this sound like? What does this Stitch sound like?
My name is Stitch 626.
Wow.
Hana means family.
That's actually pretty good.
Dead on. I like it.
My daughter and wife have always been fans of Stitch. So I've heard it a lot. Trust me.
I've looked at the AI voice changers because I always thought that would be fun to like integrate into character, especially like when I was playing that Timmy character. If I could have done it to where it did the echoing sound like every time he said something,
the demonic dude, you would have left everybody that night with nightmares. Like no joke.
But no, I think that's where like there's that with modules, you still have to. If you read straight from the module, it's going to be a very boring game.
Exactly, and I think that's my point.
There's still a point of the DM having to set the scene and like build the story and integrate you into like what's happening.
Right.
One of the maps that I sent over to you recently that I thought was really cool. There's a company you can go through that builds these like really intricate maps, and in those maps, there's these like clips that you can put into Foundry, and it does this like 3D like walkthrough of like the tunnel that you're going to go down, right? And so it gets you like into that visual of like what you're experiencing, and it's like a 7 to 10 second clip, right? It's like really quick, but it gives you that quick visual, and like the DM can be explaining it as you're seeing the visual, so you're getting all those senses involved, you know, and you're really starting to get tied into the game. So.
Yeah, my friend, when we're doing Strahd, he prepares, right? He reads ahead of time, knows what he's doing, but he will, like, if somebody asks him what the room looks like, he can then go to the module and read a detailed description that the writers already came up with, and give that added, effect or added information that some players want, right?
Right.
But they don't have to create it, keep it in their head, or scrambling to read their own notes. So he's like, oh yeah, blah, 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 blah. And then somebody's like, oh, well, what do I see? And then he pulls out the book and he's like, here's exactly what you see. And then we go back to playing.
Yeah. And see, like, I like the improv, I guess. I think that's what I'm more I enjoy more of is the improv, because when you look at D&D is an improv in general. like everything you do is technically improv.
Depending on how you play.
Right. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
yes and no
You-
at the same time
You
because your
didn't.
character.
You did improv a jungle that had like no debris on the floor, so
Hey, that was part of the improv, man. That was part of it.
I mean,
So-
dungeon crawlers don't need the improv. Like if you're just wanting to get the thrill of killing monsters, you don't need improv. Like you're rolling dice and running through. Again, that's your crowd. People who
Think you
like
got
more
us.
of the role plays, people who like more of the role play, then they want that. They are there for the improv.
Yeah, yep, that's fair. That's fair. What do you guys say about this, Daddy Bro? You look like you're just ready to go at it.
I think both guys. What you guys are saying is absolutely true. I think you have both sides of this, right? You have left brain and right brain people, right? Some of them are very, very creative and they want to go off into the mountains and rub two sticks together and come up with a scene. Other people like use the I would call it I don't want to call it prefab, but it's kind of like a prefab background, right? It's already kind of there. It's kind of structured. And I think when you can find the happy medium, that's when you have the best settings. When you have someone who can take that framework and say, okay, this is if we get stuck, we can fall back to this, right?
Right.
But in the meantime, we're going to go off into this tangent, and we're not going to start in a bar. Damn it! Yeah, if we can do that, then we're good. And I think that's pretty cool, But it all comes back to, and you got to know your characters. You got to know the players, the people that are playing in the game, right? If you got the right players, you got the right player base. Because there are some people who are really, really just like, I'm playing by the rules and I like the rules and I want structure. And they get so annoyed when you go off onto some wild tangent or, you trip and fall into a hole or something. They can't handle it,
Yeah, and if you saw here that Nebula just actually wrote a article on left brain, right brain, and the needing of balance, which, I mean, very true, very, very.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of D&D. That's why it's such an attractive game to people because it doesn't matter which side of the world you're on. Right. You can be the most obsessive, compulsive person on the planet, and you could still want to play this game, right?
Yep.
Whereas you could be the most, out there. Oh, there's flowers in the sky. You could do that too. It's just a matter of getting with the right group of people, and those people really bring balance to the game, I think.
I do too. So I have played D&D now in a bar, like because we'd use laptops to roll in Roll20, but we would go and sit at a bar around a table with computers, right? Nobody knowing unless they're actually listening.
Nerds.
I've also played with everybody who's smoking pot, and everybody goes from level to faded, and it is also another way and another group of players to play and see how it goes. But I mean, playing with altered states of mind is something D&D players have been doing for years.
Oh yeah,
jacked up on caffeine, jacked up on sugar, staying up late.
Don't do drugs, kids. Stay in school. Don't do drugs.
Oh, good Lord. So,
but that has a role in it too. I think that's because I remember having some friends in college that were just I ain't even gonna say what they were doing. It wasn't smoking pot. It was way worse. Right. Oh, and the walls are breathing, man.
Oh, good Lord.
Yeah.
Stay away from shrooms too.
I'm not going there. But I was like, I can't play with you guys anymore.
No mint flavored sugar cubes for you.
No. I'm not eating marshmallows either. I've seen that movie.
The other thing too, I was going to say really quick was like I think one of the things I've noticed is there is a level of there's a greater amount of lazy DMs than there are like DMs that really want to put in the effort. And you tend to see a lot of people that have only ever played dungeon crawl stuff because the DM's like, here's the rules, we're going to run this. They don't want to put any time or effort into it, right? And that's how they run it. And I'm not saying all DMs that run dungeon crawl stuff are that way, but I do think if you can expose players to it, like if you can do a dungeon crawl, but then also let them like have that quick experience of like this is what you see, or this is how you kill the monster, or this is what happens when this happened. Like some DMs don't even go down that road, right? They're like, oh, you kill it, move on, right? Like they don't really get into that whole aspect of it. I think if you can get D&D players that have never experienced that before to actually get that experience, that it changes their thought on what D&D is as a whole.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. Daddy, it looks like you had something to say too.
I was good. It helps to have a group of people that brings a balance to it too. You need your extremes. You need people who are hardcore role followers, and you need people who are just out there having a good time. You know, I'm sitting at the bar having a drink. Whatever. Whatever happens.
Leo.
I'm gonna get behind my frying pan and call it a day.
Right.
And that's like my you guys were there with my kid. She's like, you're just lazy. And I'm like, no, I'm smart. I hide. Leave me alone. You know, she doesn't understand the tactics yet, and that's because she's new. And I give her the grace of that she's new and my child, and I don't want to have to harm her. But
with a frying pan.
Yeah, with a frying pan. But
with a frying pan.
Oh Lord, it's one of those things, you know. And she's just being a paladin because they're obnoxious like that. And I think that it's really important to have a balanced group like that. It really helps build out the character. It kind of brings color to everything. I think it's a good idea to do it in a state of mind that makes sense for you. We were talking about altered state of consciousness, and I'm not saying it's a good or bad thing because there's nothing wrong with it as long as you're doing it safely, right? But realize that not everybody can handle that. Not everybody can do that. And if you're not familiar, don't try. I'm telling you. Or if you do it with people you trust and be in a safe environment, right? Don't be hanging out on a bridge or something. Hey, let's do this. No, don't do that.
Yeah,
I would feel really bad about that.
The altered state of mind was my group of all vets.
Yeah,
and so we would drink and smoke, and we got as far as we got.
That's a good time right there.
Right, and honestly, I don't have anything wrong against any of that. Like, if you want to do it and it enhances your gaming experience, by all means, boo boo, you do you. But for me, like, I just like the clairvoyance of mind to be able to function, because otherwise, I'm going to sit there and go, I'm hungry.
Right.
And so
that's why you do it in a bar. You can order food.
Yeah.
Right. So, that's just from my own 2 cents, my own perspective.
I remember old school, like when I was playing second edition in like the 80s, there was times where we would actually do actual short rest and actual long rest. So like you would take like an hour power nap, and and you're doing like, it's during the summers or whatever, and you're doing like a week long, like, you're just, that's what you're doing for the week, is like just going through and like doing a campaign, and like you're sleeping in between like sessions, and also like all your buddies are there. I remember going through all that too. Yeah. So
24-hour gaming sessions.
Dude, we would start at like 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon and play all the way up until 5 a.m. donuts. And I can't tell you how many times we did that. We would do it once a week though. It was fantastic. I enjoyed every minute of it.
Yeah.
So, with that being said, though, let's bring it down and bring it into a close. One of the things that we want to really just kind of touch base on, though, if you are suffering from PTSD of any sorts, and you are a veteran first responder, by all means, you can get a hold of any of us. We'll be more than happy to sit down and talk to you, help you out, get you through any scenarios. Chris, do you still have that number from last week?
Yeah, it's
he's like,
I think it's 988, but let me double check.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah. 988 press
1. 988.
Yep.
Yeah. If you need help, get help. That's Daddy Bro's famous line.
Yes, sir.
So I'll let Daddy Bro go into it. Give us your little spill, man.
Yeah. So this, every time I do a stream, every time I end my stream, I say it the same way. Make sure you get yourself something good to eat. Get yourself something good to drink. Hug the people in your life because you never know how long you have them. And last but not least, if you need help, get help. Getting help does not make you weak. It, in fact, makes you strong. And have a good night. That's it.
Absolutely.
That's how
All
we
right.
do it.
Fantastic. So, yeah, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching. You guys have a wonderful night.
Go Cowboys. Woohoo!